If you are a Mac user and you are going to the site, the restaurant, the hotel deals that you will get is completely different from what if you are a Windows user. Why is that? Because somebody did the analytics and they know that a Mac user, on an average, purchases a hotel which is about 30% more expensive than a Windows user. Predictive analytics. So it's hitting the hotel industry, hospitality industry. If you look at it, the economist says by 2016, by the way, it's doubling every year. Airbnb usage is doubling every year, and as a user, I highly recommend it. Maybe not if you're going on a business trip. Doesn't make sense to you, right? Company is paying for you, might as well stay in a good hotel. But if you're going on fun, Airbnb works very beautifully. All right, so we saw some examples. Now we'll talk about who's using it, what are the ways companies are actually using it, and we'll talk about it in monetary terms, right? Show me the money, right? How are they really making money? And then, like I said, we'll go to the last section where we say how you're going to implement it in your company. We talked about Amazon, personalization, right? 35% of revenues for Amazon. This is a company that's making upwards of $70 billion revenues, right? We're talking about $20 billion. $20 billion of that comes from recommendations. What does that mean? You just log into the site. You have absolutely no inclination to buy anything. You're just logging in, and you're saying, hey, let me just see what's there on the site, right? And then you're seeing an offer that you like. You're going to click on that, and then you're going to buy it. $20 billion, 35% of Amazon revenues comes from predictive analytics by predicting the right thing that people are buying from Amazon. The same thing from Netflix. We talked about Netflix, right? Why Netflix is killing cable. 70% of their revenues come from recommendations. In fact, people like it so much and they trust it so much that if they go and see there's a recommendation that they say you might like it, they'll actually click on it without checking further about it because they're pretty sure that people are going to watch or they're going to like it. That kind of trust level. So why stay with US companies? Let's go to an Indian company. So Amitabh Misra, who's a VP of Snapdeal, mentioned that about 40% of their revenues also come from recommendation engines. 40% of the revenues. That's the power of predictive analytics. Let's look at a few other examples. I know you can't read that. I'm sorry about that. But IRS, I don't have the data for IT for India. But at least if you look at Internal Revenue Service, about 5 years back, about 80 years back rather, they teamed up with John Elder for Elder Research. He's one of the pioneers in financial fraud analytics, right? They did IRS paired up with him to do real-time fraud analytics on the submissions, right? The number of fraud they detect, tax cheating they detect went up by 25 times. 25 times, not 25%, 25 times. Hollywood, every script that gets approved by any major movie company gets run through a predictive analytics code, which says how much money is that going to generate. It doesn't stop there. Once the script gets approved, it goes to the next level where they pair up various actors and actresses and say how much revenue will this thing bring if I pair, let's say, Tom Cruise with somebody else. I don't know, right? Barack Obama, we talked about it. He used predictive modeling, persuasion modeling. So here in this case, there's about 60% or maybe let's say 80% of the voters kind of like decided, right? They're either going to vote for the Democrats or going to vote for the Republicans. There's about 20% who's sitting on the fence. How many of them can you influence? Using what can you influence? What issue matters to them? Because US, it's absolutely, most of the swing voters, they're based on issues. Maybe it's abortion. Maybe it's lesbian and gay rights. Maybe it's something else. What issues matters to them? And how can you reach out to them? Who will vote for the person? The last thing that the predictive model predicts is that will they actually go to vote? It's okay that they like you, but will they actually go and vote? If they don't finally go and vote, there's no point in reaching out to them as well, right? Predictive modeling. HP, warranty claims. HP detects frauds in warranty claims. So there's a lot more other companies who are doing it. And I'll go a little faster here because there's some interesting stuff also I want to get into, not only in the commercial sense. FedEx, 60 to 90% accuracy in seeing that if a customer will leave them. Their 65 to 90% is because they have micro segments, right? There are the regular guys who just walk in, and then there are high-end organizations which rely on FedEx, in which case they have a much higher predictive model. Telenor, there's a very interesting case where when mobile number portability originally came, it was a big threat for almost all telecom companies because now customers are no longer chained by, by the mobile number. They can take that mobile number to any other company. So it was a huge problem for most companies, and Telenor went and implemented a predictive analytic model. And in doing that, they reduced their customer churn by about 36% from previous, while reducing the cost involved in doing that. Isn't that remarkable? They reduce the cost. If they're spending 100 million on customer retention, that is 60 million now. But they retained a lot more customers. Because of the same models that we talked about, because they know exactly whom to reach out to. They don't have to reach out to 100 of them. They can reach out to some of them who will actually stay. Let's get into some interesting stuff. So this is, of course, basketball. The guy is Dirk Nowitzki. He's a famous, if you're following NBA, you know him. He's a 7-foot tall German. Can't miss him. He's a power forward. One of the best, I believe, in the plays for Dallas Mavericks. This is analyzing him. If you're an opponent who's fighting him, you look at this. The red dots are the places where he scores most, right? That's important to you. You would ideally want him to be in those blue spots because that's where he doesn't score. Now, if you're looking at cricket, you'll already be thinking, I already have this data for cricket, right? I mean, if Sachin Tendulkar or whoever that is, Virat Kohli comes to bat, you already say where he's scoring most runs from. Here's the difference. It's a lot tougher in basketball. The reason is that you're looking at 10 players who are in constant motion over 1,284 square feet field. And that shot can be made from any place. That's a lot more complicated. You have to calculate that in real time. Of course, the other one also gets calculated in real time, but that's over a small pitch. This one is 10 players all over, right? A lot more complicated. And the technology that they use is, it was originally, this was an Israeli company, and they actually created this optical tracking technology to track missiles and intercept them, like kind of like the cruise missiles and stuff like that. And then they said, okay, let me put that in sports analytics, right? So they created this, and they had a 6-camera setup which would put over the field, and they tried that on a trial basis in 2013, and it worked so well that now NBA has decided, as of September 2013, all the NBA courts have it. Cost about $100,000 to install it for an NBA court. NASA. So NASA has about, even with all this budget cuts and everything, right, they have close to about 100 programs still running, right? Some of them are what they call as Earth orbiters, some of them what they call as deep space orbiters. And the major difference between them, at least from our perspective, is the kind of data that they send back, right? The deep space orbiters are a lot far away, and they can send only data in megabytes per second, whereas Earth orbiters are a lot closer. They can send data in gigabytes per second. The Kepler space program is basically a space vessel, which is in deep space, and it's actually a telescope, right? Was launched in 2009, and until now, its primary objective was to find the planets as well as stars rather, not suns. So far, it's been a remarkable success. Originally, it was thought that it will live for about 3 years. It still lives, so 5 years and past, still running. And it looks at about 145,000 stars in a fixed field of view. And here's what it does. How do you discover planets? When a planet crosses a star, you calculate the brightness level like this. When it crosses a star, there's a dip in the intensity. You calculate that, you can calculate stars. They have found close to 1,000 stars in just 5 years. 1,000 planets by 2015. Remarkable progress. This kind of progress has never been made so far in discovering planets. They also found the oldest star as yet, which is Kepler 444, about 11.2 billion years old. Comparison, Sun is about 4.6 billion years old. Anybody tried Kaggle competition? Anybody tried in Kaggle? All right, you guys. It's one of the remarkable things to do if you're a data scientist and you're looking at some interest. They say they're making data science a sport. Netflix came in that. There are many competitions that are happening. So far, close to about 60 odd competitions happen. There are prizes, and the prizes vary from close to about, sometimes there are no prizes. It's just, you're just there for the sport. Sometimes it happens because there's a lot of money involved, $10,000 to up to $3 million for various prizes. But it goes more, this is something that was very interesting. You can become an instant billionaire if you know how to predict well. How many follow NCCA, the March Madness? All right, there's one person, oh, few people, okay. Okay, so NCCA March Madness is about National College Athletic Association. They have this basketball tournament that happens in March. About 64 different university teams comes together to play huge, like IPL of basketball games. And there's about 64 matches. In 2014 Jan, Warren Buffett announced that if we can predict the 64 winners of these matches, you can walk home with $1 billion. $1 billion. The thing is that nobody got it because it's very complicated, right? It sounds easy, but then you're looking at, so it's an elimination round. So every time somebody wins, right, those people get to the next level. So you have 2:63 combinations. That's about 1 to 9 quadrillion choices. In comparison, you're much easier. It's much more easy to win a lottery. It's about 1 to 1 billion chances. And that's exactly what another person said. John Ginther, she was a mathematics PhD from Stanford. She won close to about 20 lotteries. What did she do? She did some predictive analytics, and she said, how is the next lottery number going to be using various predictive analytic techniques? And then she would go and she would buy. She would buy some combinations of lottery tickets, and she won about 20 plus times, and 4 of them were jackpots, getting her about $15 million. When Steve Jobs was analyzed with pancreatic cancer, the first thing that he did was to have his DNA sequence. Cost him about, I think, about upwards of $200,000. Not much a big money for Steve Jobs, but why did he do that? Was that every medicine that your doctor is giving to you, they make certain assumptions, right? They take a generic sample and then they say that this medicine should work for you. If it doesn't work for you, they give you another one, right? But they have few choices. But if you know the genetic structure of you, they can actually have some predictive models. In fact, Watson, which won Jeopardy, the IBM Watson, actually does this, right? So they can predict and say this works much better for you. Of course, it doesn't give you immortality. He died, but he was able to prolong his life. The same way, when a baby is born, you can do the DNA analysis and you can find all this data. What's your risk for each of these diseases? And then it can tell you what kind of treatment will work for you. And you can do that here right now. Strand is a company, Strand Life Sciences is a company which does it in Bangalore. You can pay about 10 lakhs, you can have your DNA sequence. You'll have about 145 GB of data. Of course, DNA is very complicated, right? But you can do that in Bangalore. But the long term, in the future, what you're talking about is that we can do that less than $100 at some time. And then this kind of predictive treatment will be there for everyone. Right now we can't afford it. Well, not many of us can. But at some point of time, all of us will be able to. All right, I'm getting to my last segment and I'm almost done. Here's a problem. So if predictive analysis is so great, why is everybody not implementing it? This is the problem. Gartner did a research and they said close to about 50% of predictive analysis fail. Why do they fail? They fail due to 2 reasons. One is that it's not providing enough ROI. What is ROI? We already talked about the return on insights. All this money they invested, they're not bringing enough insights in predictive analytics to justify the money that they invested. Wall Street Journal did a survey of people working on big data specifically, and they asked them, did their project get scrapped? And 44% of software engineers said, yes, their project got scrapped. So now, how do I get it right? So I'm an entrepreneur, and I have an idea. How do I know that this idea is right? Or I have a great idea, and I want to sell it to my company. How do I do that? Here's my recommendation. So it's all about 3 questions. If you want to know whether your idea is right, it's all about 3 questions. The first question is why, and that is driven by intuition. You have to trust your gut. The second is what, it's driven by data. And finally, it's about how. And when you put a Venn diagram and you put all those things together, you'll get that perfect spot, which is a magic. And if your idea is in it, then I can guarantee you that'll succeed. Let's illustrate that a little bit. So 2001, there was a guy called Oren Etzioni, and he was sitting on a plane. He was flying from LA to Philadelphia. And so it was for his brother's marriage, and he booked that about 4 or 5 months back. Of course, it was his brother's marriage, and he knew about it. He booked it about 4 or 5 months back. And then as he sat, and the other passengers came in, he just started a conversation with them. Hey, what price did you buy your ticket for? Turned out that he paid more than the guy who was booked about 5 weeks back. How did that happen, right? So at this time, you will ask multiple questions. As my question would be, why does it happen to me? I booked so much, in advance. Why does it happen to me? But he has a different question. He's founded some other company. That's what they do, right? Serial entrepreneurs. But he has a why question, and he got something that works. Anyone recognize this TV series? House of Cards, yes. So House of Cards is important for Netflix. First of all, it was a very commercially successful TV series, but more importantly, it's something that they went and bought it for $100 million before seeing anything. Typically, when companies buy a serial, right, they pay money for a pilot product. First of all, they have to read the script and everything. Like I said, they run through that through a predictive algorithm. They see the script, then they give money for a pilot. They make a pilot, and then they come back and they see the pilot. If they like it, they will give money for the whole season. That's how they do it. In this case, Netflix didn't do it. Why? Because Netflix already has a lot of data about the customer. They already know how many people will watch a Kevin Spacey movie or a Kevin Spacey serial. They know how many people will watch a David Fincher movie. David Fincher, in case you don't know, is a famous director who created The Curious Case of Benjamin Button and The Social Network. He has a cult following, right? How many people would watch David Fincher? And lastly, how many people would watch a political thriller? The same way, you do a Venn diagram, and you know exactly how many people is going to watch it. They bought that for $100 million, and the rest is history. It's a huge success